I'm starting with 3 pieces of 18 gauge square gold fill wires. They're 12 inches long. You could be using copper, you could be using silver, and you could be using round wires if you wanted to. Each of these is cut to 12 inches long and I've pre-straightened them. I'm going to put them down on my measure and I'm just going to mark the center at 6 inches. The stone I'm using is a beautiful teardrop shaped ruby enzocyte, mostly ruby, very gemmy. It's beautifully cut and it's about 1 inch wide by 1 inch tall, little wider than 1 inch but not much, and a little shorter than 1 inch but not much. I would say it's 3 millimeters thick. It's a little uneven, you can see that, and that's okay. This traditional 101 frame will fit this stone quite nicely. I have 9 inches of 22 gauge half round wire for the banding that I'm going to do in the center of the wires, and then we'll use some more 22 gauge later on for the bail. I've got a spot of painter's tape. I'm going to align all 3 of my square wires side by side so there's no twisting in them. And I'm just going to tape the end and then walk my fingers past the middle and towards the other end of my wire so that nothing crisscrosses and nothing twists. And I'll put a piece of tape right there to help me out as well. I'm about 1 inch away from the ends. Just like that. I'm going to take my 22 gauge square wire. I'm going to take my 22 gauge half round wire. And I'll just keep the flat side down and I'll straddle my center point on my frame wires and make one nice wrap. Make sure it's nice and tight. And I'll go ahead and make 8 wraps to the right. Tap them down, make them nice and side by side. There's 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'll go ahead and do the same on this side. I'll pull this leading wire out and back in to get the bubble out of that first wire. I'll just turn myself around. My center mark is still right there underneath that first wrap. So I'll do 8 to this side. And there's 8. I'll tap everything nice and flat. And I've ended the wires, the wraps on this side of the wire. So now I'll just cut these fragments off. Don't cut your finger like I just did. Ooh. Tap those cut ends down. And that's the side that'll go up against the stone. My wires are still nice and together and side by side. I'm going to work in this direction, so my cuts are over here, my tape flaps are up. What I want to do is make a tiny little point down here at the bottom of this pendant. You don't have to. So I'm going to put a spot of tape on the back of my stone. Just revisiting our 101 basics here. Make the tape smaller than the back side of my stone to make sure it doesn't get in my way when I'm working. So you might have to rip the tape a little bit. I'll put my stone down on a logical center line here. So my tip's on a vertical line. The bottom of my stone is on a horizontal line. I'm checking the cross points to see that I'm fairly centered here all the way around, and I am. Just push it down. That tape will help you stay in place while we work these wires. So I'm going to take my strip of wire. I'm going to find the middle of it at 8 wraps. My flat plier is flush, and I'll just bend this to a 90-degree angle. I'm making sure that my 2 halves are equal here. Just take it up to 90 degrees. Tap all sides to make sure you've got a nice level bend right there. When I put it down here on my stone, I want there to be about 1/4 of an inch. I'm a little long, so I'm probably going to make it less than 90 degrees. I'll just take this and hold one side and open it up slightly, just like that. And that shortened the distance slightly. I'm going to do a little bit more. I'll hold it from the other side and just push back slightly, making sure that my 2 sides stay nice and even and level. Like that. And that's pretty good there. I'm just above my 1/4 inch mark at this point. And I have my wire sides going out the sides there. My stone has a pretty sharp bend to it right there. Let me adjust my camera for you. So I'll work down here on the mat a little bit so you can see it. I'm going to hold everything steady, and I'm holding this side of the wire so that it doesn't travel while I push on the one side of the wire. On the opposite side of the wire, I'm holding my stone down and make sure that the tip is on that vertical line so I'm level. And I'm just going to take a real nice sharp bend, make sure that nothing's ahead of you so your wires don't crash into stuff like mine are doing. Hold everything super steady. Make sure that point stays on that vertical center line and just make a nice curve. Right here at the top, where it meets, that crisscross right there, you're about 2 millimeters up above the stone. You can take a plier or you can mark it with your marker first and then take the bend. So right here, even though I'm upside down, you'd probably be facing you. I'm just going to make a line right there across my wires. I'm about 2 millimeters here. That way I can pick it up and show you the bend a little bit better. And I'll just put my plier flat and flush and do a bend back up to vertical. Don't bend too far because we only need to be vertical to this point, to the bottom point. So when I put it back down, you can see I'm on my vertical line. I'm center here. My curve is nice and hitting there, and I've got a little bitty bit of space right there. So I'll hold everything again, hold all this, the wire down, hold the stone down, hold real steady, and make sure to take this bend. If you have tape underneath the stone, the last wire might slip underneath it a little bit because the tape raises the stone. So just don't freak out, just control that. If it happens, we'll just adjust it after you make the bend. So here I go. I'm going to make this bend. It's going to collide with this wire a little bit, so I'm going to jump over it, and just keep making the sharp bend right down here at this sharp curve. If your stone's less triangular, that might not be that sharp of a bend. And see how my last wire sunk in slightly because it went underneath the stone a little bit, and that's okay. It's going up against the back of the stone anyway. I'm going to use my fingers and just level it back out. And that looks pretty good. And then right here, just beside the other wire, I'll take my plier and just eyeball the turn up. So that when I put my sides together, I turned a little bit farther than I wanted to. Let me change my camera a little bit again so you can see. So I'm just going to adjust for that bend by gripping it right here. Get it side by side to the other one. Just do a little jiggle. Deepen the other one slightly. Just work in small moves until you get a nice meeting of your two halves up there. Now if I come back down on my stone, I should be able to pinch those together and have a nice center line up my stone. I'm a little bit off, so I'll just use my plier, hold everything and do a little bit of squeezing right there at the neck to level it out. Okay, just like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, they just have to come together nicely like that. I'll pick this up now so you can see a little better. Take the tape off the back of the stone there. So your frame should be nice and flat. Should come together at the top of the wires should come together at the top of your stone, you know, fairly center. My stone's a little off symmetry, that's okay. My bend was a little bit off as well, but that's okay. I can always make these adjustments, and so can you on yours. Make sure the frame is sitting, you know, upright, the whole cup. Sometimes these wires want to slant. So you just work it until you got a nice, clean frame. Just like that. Keep coming back down to check the fit. That's why I like the tape flaps up. It tells me which side is the front side of my frame, and that's really beautiful right there. Just like that. I'm just going to scooch these wires a little bit with my fingers and even them up a little bit. Okay. Just small tweaks to your frame. No drastic moves. And I use the tape flaps because even though my stone looks symmetrical, it's a little off. So that'll help me keep my direction for my frame. All right, so there goes that. Now I'll get 16 inches of 22 gauge half round wire for the veil. Half round has a flat side, so I'll just run my finger over it. Keep the flat side down. I'll bend over the top a couple of inches there. I'm going to pick up just the wire. Hold it so that you're going to wrap the long end moving up the frame. So put the little hook over. Make a little wrap. Get it nice and tight. I'm working gold, so I'm going to take the shorty and actually make my neck wraps so that I don't waste this little bit. You can wrap with whichever side you want. You know, you can hold on to the short end, which is normally what I have you guys do, for some leverage. And that kind of wastes a little bit of that inch. So I'm wrapping the short end for less wasted wire. Make it nice and tight. I'll take this first one, pull it, give it a little trim so that it's living at the bottom base of the neck of the pendant. We're going to cover it up so I'm not concerned with it. And I'm going to pull tight that first wrap and then just give a couple of taps here to make sure all that's nice and tight, that the wraps are at the base of my neck. Okay. So when I bring my stone up, you might have to fiddle it a little bit to get it to fit again. Be careful of your gemstone. Make sure the wires go real nice and snug over the stone. Okay, just like that. Nice and clean and beautiful. Now flip to the back of the stone. We're going to make little indents, the little seats that we like to do, so that the stone has a back side. This is a pretty tight fit for mine, so I'm going to leave my stone in place. 2mm flat nose plier. Make sure that you're protecting your stone. I'll grip right here at the edge of my wraps, put my thumb on the curve, and just make a 90-degree turn up and above the edge, bottom edge of your stone. My stone's very rectangular, so you might have to fiddle the stone a little bit to get it to go back there, or work without the stone in place. Mine is in place because it's thinner on one side than the other, so I'm just doing it in place to make sure I get a good fit. Take this side. I have a little lip at the back of the stone there to make sure that I can make my vertical turn, just like that. Nice and clean, straight up the back of the stone. And you'll just make sure that these wings lay down and that the two side wires are indeed on the sides of your stone. And then we have a nice little seat right there. Mine's pretty tight, so it's okay if you have a little breathing space. Just keep the neck nice and together as you work. You might have to tap it right here a little bit once you adjust those wires in the back. You know, once you do that turn, it's going to push wire this way, so you might have to make small adjustments. That should make sense. Okay, so now I'll come to the front and I'll do the very same, in the very same places. I'm going to make sure my wraps are nice and clean and even, that my stone is sitting level, that the back wires are landed, and now I'm just going to repeat this on the front of the stone. My stone is very gemmy. It's a little bit thick. I'm only using 3 wires because it was thin on one side. So to make sure I don't have any scraping that goes on against the stone, I'm going to part these wires slightly and give a slight raise to the one on top. This one, the center one, is down the side of my stone, just like that. And I've got a slight raise on the one in the front so that when I make that turn, it doesn't scrape against my gemstone. Okay? So I'll turn here, I'll hold my nice curve, I'll get my plier nice and even against those wraps and on that wire, and I'll just make a very nice and steady upward turn to make sure I'm not putting too much pressure on the sides of my stone or the edges of my stone. And I'm just going to turn that in until I like it, which is about right there. It's going to push wire up my stone, so I'm just going to use my thumb and forefinger and put the wire back down nicely on the face of the stone. You'll also motion wire up, right? Because it pushes that wire once we do that little bend. So you'll just help it motion upward, making sure that, you know, this one's in the back, this one's in the side, and this one's laying nicely along the front. Okay, just like that. It's very minimal coverage. I can even push it back off the stone slightly to give more stone face there. So I'm just barely on the edge, and I like that. So I'll do the same on this side. I'm going to raise this upper wire slightly to make sure that I don't stress the stone. Put my thumb against that curve there to help hold its elegance. Take my nice flat plier and get right on the edge of the plier, right on the edge of the wire with a nice firm grip. And I'm just going to make a very careful turn to the inside of the stone. I'm working square wire, so I'm keeping all the squares facing me, all the flat part of the square facing me. If you're working round, you won't, have any issue. Sometimes square, the corners want to turn up, and you just manage that. I'm going to push back right here to get off of the stone a little bit, making sure my frame's nice and flat. Sometimes the back starts to poke out like that. You see it? Make sure that stays nice and flat. If you have to, pull these in slightly. My nails might be a little weak to do it, so I'll take my plier and I'm just doing a careful nudge inward so that the top back of my stone stays in place. If you can't do that nudge, turn it this way and pinch it, the upper 2 wires only. Just make sure you're, fully on the back of your stone so that you don't cause stress. And pinch them in slightly. Okay, might raise those little wings a little bit. Just make adjustments, push them back down. And doing that little bit will help this not to fall back a little so much. Be careful on your rock. Give everything a little pressure so it lays down flat and even. Check your side wires, make sure that, the one in front, one on the side, one in the back, and that you have nice, elegant lines. You might have to re-pinch the neck to stay on top, and you might have to pinch the top wire a little bit to make it look a little even as well. Okay, just work in small moves and get the front looking the way you want it, and I really want minimal coverage because this whole cabochon is so gemmy. So I'm going to push this wire right out to the edge so I've got the most gemstone showing. Just manage your half round so it stays nice and clean. I'm going to lay this down and just make a couple of squeezes right here at the neck. My hands and my arm is a little bit weak today. It's easier sometimes on the board. Okay, so just like that, you guys. So now that we have those wires in place and the stone is in place, we can take our tape off the top wires, do a nice peel, rip it off, don't wrinkle up your wires. And we'll use the 2 front wires to be the bail, and we'll flip them out to the back. So I'm going to pull these 2 front ones forward slightly. I've got my thumb right here at the neck so that those wraps are nice and tight and down. Got my wires side by side so that they're nice and square. And I'm going to pull them forward. If you can't pull them forward, use your plier. And just to help bend them forward slightly, you'll feel like the wires below are moving a little bit, and they might because it's all one wire right there, right? But just keep it under control and just get these out to a nice 90 degrees where you can work with them. And they're side by side. Okay, keep your half round flat. Get that first top wrap nice and tight, and then turn the wire so that the flat side stays against the frame wires. And snuggle into that neck. It's only uncomfortable right here for about 5 wraps until you get past that deep corner. So just go overhand and underhand. Try to land the wraps side by side. Keep the 2 square frame wires side by side. Get those wraps tight enough so that they're living like this. Get 3 or 4 wraps and then you can tap them. You can make 3 more wraps, overhand and underhand, side by side. Tight enough that these 2 square wires come together side by side. Then tap them. Now it should be easier for you to wrap. So after about 6 or 7 of these wraps, it's about 1/4 of an inch. So you'll wrap for another 1 inch. So we'll have a 1 1/4 inch bail.
Wrap.
And that's about 1 1/4 inches there. For 16 inches that you started with, you should have about 3.5 inches or so left over once you get your 1 1/4 inches of bail wrap there. Here's the front. I've got my 4 design wires up top, so I'm going to part them 2 to the left and 2 to the right. I'm going to hold my plier right here on the neck so that it doesn't separate while I do this. And I'll just make a very deep bend right there, bringing these 2 pair down to horizontal on either side of my bail. So just soft horizontal bends like that to get them down and out of the way. We'll bend this one back up to vertical. You might have to do a little bit of tapping right here where we bent it to get it nice again. Don't worry if you have a little bit there, we're going to cover that up. Okay, so up here on my bail, I'm just going to use my fingers and push the center so that it creates a bend. I'm going to bring this wrap down to the base of, the starting of the neck wrap right here. And I'll bring the 2 wires straight down the back of the pendant while I do this. So just like that, my wraps are landing right at the first or so wrap of the neck. I'm just going to take my finger and pinch and pull these 2 wires up a little bit so that I can get closer to the neck, and then lay them right back down, just like that. You can raise the 2 design wires slightly, hold on to everything and just raise them slightly to get them out of your way. We'll continue with the half round that you have. Go all the way around the neck. Get the whole thing, keeping the flat side against the bail wires. You'll just make nice tight wrap, 2 or 3 of them down the neck. I'm going to go for 1 more since I have the wire. If you need to use your plier, you can. It's a big wrap around all of them. 2 or 3, and in my case 4 times, because I'm using gold, I don't want to waste it. Just wrap until you get to the base of the neck, right here. I'm going to lift these 2 back wires slightly. I'm holding the last coil to make sure there's no bubble. And then I'm just going to end this wire by wrapping it twice around the base of this neck right here. These 2 back wires. And I'll end this half round by cutting it, leaving just a couple of millimeters so that I can turn and tuck this end underneath these 2 wires at the back of the pendant and tap that right there. Okay. And lay those wires down. You might have to use your plier and jiggle the neck upright a little bit after you've worked it like that. Here's the front, and that looks pretty good. These 2 are coming down the back. I got my design wires to either side right here, and I like that. So this is the basic, what I call the basic 101 traditional frame. And from here, you can set up all of your stones this way, or a lot of them in this same basic framing, either 3 wires, 4 wires, 20 gauge, 18 gauge, whatever you want. And then go back through, several of them and just do the bail designs. And the body designs if you want. So now that I have my basic frame, and the stone is secure, I'm going to go to the back. I'm going to part these 2 wires out, one to each side, real tight right up here at the base of the neck. And I'm just holding it with my fingers, but if you need to, you can grab a pair of pliers and just clamp down right there and then part these 2 out, one to each side. Mine are square, so I'm going to twist them to get a little scallop effect to them, and then I'm going to bring them around to the sides and front for design. I might actually lift them a little bit more than this. Once you get them parted out fairly evenly, if you need to, you can use a plier and help you turn them out just a little more horizontally, just a little more off the neck. Affect just that one wire. Try not to get the wire below it. Try to keep your bail center while you're doing that. So just like that. So you can see it. When you come up here, you can kind of see them towards the top of the stone. All right, there's 2 ways to twist wire. I don't have a pin vise on me, but there is a device called a pin vise, which you can clamp onto this and twist, but I'm going to just use my pliers. It's a short distance, and this is gold filled wire, so I'm going to try real hard not to scuff my wire as I do this, but I'm using nice flat pliers. I'm going to start about 1 inch away from the tension point of the intersection here. I'll grip my wire real tight, and I'll just give it a nice even turn. Regrip and do that again, and I'm counting. This is the 3rd turn and the 4th turn, and then I'm just going to drop another inch and do 1, 2, 3, and 4 turns to get an even scalloping. And I can drop another inch and continue to do that. I'm not going to. I'm just going to do those 2 inches. I'll come to this side and repeat that. Just kind of grip and twist my wire 1, 2, 3, and 4 times. Try to grip on the flat so that you don't chip the wire, and try to make even rotations. So I'll move down about 1 inch, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, and 4 turns. Okay, and that's pretty good. I've got even scalloping on both sides. I'm looking at the back right here. This is the front, and now with these, I can kind of just trim down the sides. So I'll pull them slightly forward, make sure that I've got a nice elegant slope, and I'm going to come just in between the back wire and the center wire here, and just use the edge of that stone to give myself a nice little turn right there. So it'll just be like a little filigree along the edge, a little scalloping along the edge. I'll slant this wire to get a nice slope here and do the same. Just kind of follow the stone. And the side edge of the stone. When the wire is twisted like this, it becomes much harder, and you have to work for the elegant corners. It sometimes wants to do a sharper corner than you want, so you just work patiently. Use your plier if you need to help you curve the wire a little bit more. Otherwise, you should just have it poking out kind of along the sides like this. Probably just going to turn this one a little bit more right here. And I'm going to extend it towards the back so that I have a nice tight turn, and when it bounces back, the intersection stays right there, but that I can see my 2 edges. So that's pretty good. So from there we need to tie these 2 wires off. I'll just use my plier and my eyeball, and I'll turn these 2 wires back down to vertical. Right there at that bottom center point. Don't push, don't pull. just bend them so that they come together, the bottom center, but that you can still see your edges along the sides when you look at the front. You just make little tweaks as necessary. Just kind of like that. Just get these two so that they come down the back, down the bottom. And their center, when I hold them together, that looks pretty good. I can see my two little scalloped edges there for a little extra on my pendant. So I'll take another spot of 22 gauge half round wire, take about 6 inches. It's about 6 inches. Just gonna put the flat side to this side, bend it in half so the flat side's on the inside. And I'll just straddle these two wires right here, crisscross them in the back so that I get a nice wrap around those two wires. You can use your plier and help you pull it tight. Just get that wrap right up there at the neck. And then I'm going to take the right hand side one with the flat side up against the frame. And I'm going to wrap once. And twice. You want to just have these land side by side. Make 3. The scalloped wire will make it a little difficult to do that, and that's okay. Just work through it. Once you get 3 nice wraps on that side, come to the opposite side, pull that first loop tight. You can tap the wire a little bit if you need to. Remember that this frame wire still flows, back and forth, so just hold onto the stone as well as working these wires. So I'll make 3 nice decorative wraps right here. These are just decorative to get you started and to hold these 2 wires together. 2, and to also give you some tie wires down here with this half round. And there goes 3. So it should look just like that. Nice and even. Once you have 3 on each side, take the half round through the bottom of the frame, the big frame. Get a nice even wrap. It'll slant this wire from the back towards the upper front slightly, and that's what you want. You want it just along that middle square wire. So I'll get a nice tight wrap with that one. And I'll wrap 3 times just because it looks like it's deliberate and part of design. Once I get 3 right there, I'll end this wire by taking it through and wrapping once just around that bottom twisted wire. You just tap these, try to get them side by side and looking nice. And that's pretty good. I might go through here just one more time for 2 nice clean wraps. And I'll leave that little wire there in case I need it. I'll come back to this side. I'll do the same. I'll go through and get 3 nice clean wraps around the whole thing. Try to make them even to the opposite side. There might be a little gap between these wraps because of the twisted wire, and that's okay too. Just make it look nice. And then for your last one, take a single wrap around just the twisted wire. It'll be a little bit tight, But you can do it, and then I'm going to go once more. Okay, once you get those wrapped right there, we can go ahead and get rid of these tiny fragments. Turn to the back. Just snip them off real low and inside that space right there so that they're not felt or seen. And you just tap them down with some fine pliers right there at the back of the pendant, nice and clean. And nothing to be seen in the front. So now we have these two wires down here that we can do a little something with if we wanted to bring some design down here to the lower portion of the pendant. And I'm just going to make an even cut the little jags off at the ends. I'll get my fine plier, and right here at the end of the wraps, like we always normally do, I like to flip this wire up. Just be real careful you don't give yourself any little nicks. And I'm just at the bottom of the twists where they ended, and so the majority of my wire is straight. And I'm just bending them forward. Be careful not to scratch your stone. Once you get the bends on, take a bigger plier and just make the bends a little bit cleaner and tighter. Just like that. The tips of this wire are not touching my stone. So I'll grip right down here at the twisted part. I've got maybe the bottom 2 millimeter of the wire. And I'll just part these wires out into a little bit of design to the left and then to the right of the pendant, just about to the bottom of the stone, just like that. Once I clear the stone, I'll just give it a little pressure and close these spaces up slightly, just like that. If you want to put a little turnout here at the bottom for some cuteness, you can do that. Just 2 little bumps out. These wires are nice and flush with the front of the pendant, touching those 2 wires that come along the sides right here, so everything's nice and flat. Might just give a little more pressure and even them out. Okay, just like that. I can tie some bead balls in there if I want to. Still pretty clear in the back. So if you're going to tie something across there, remember to leave yourself available space to get in there. I might just bring these a little bit lower along this frame. So I'm more like just underneath the stone, about 1 millimeter. So you can see the side. I'll get my round nose plier. And you can make these, as big or as little as you want. And that's pretty good. All right, so now with the top, we'll tie those off a little bit later on. And now with the top, we'll do some small design. I like this pendant to be a little bit simple, so we'll bring some small design down in the front here, and then possibly, you know, a little bit in the back as well. So the first thing we'll do is take these front wires and just turn, you know, a little bit of a curl or a curve onto the front of the pendant, like we like to do right there to get a nice shape. And I know I do that a lot, but it's elegant and it's clean. And I'm just going to very carefully, if you can do it with your finger, just push the wire back down onto the bail. If you have a hard time with your finger, you can get a nice wide plier. Try to get in there delicately, don't scratch up the front. That's your design wire, and it's right up on top in front. And just give a little pressure and push it back. All right, second wire, push it forward, roll it over with your finger onto the front, push it down, take your thumb, push it all the way down. So you have that little bit there. Just let it come off the side like this one here, right next to that one. And that looks pretty good. Okay, and so from this side then, we're going to take only one wire, the front one, and we'll flip it on but low if you can. So bring it down, bring it forward, and then get your little loop on it when it's right next to the other one, and push. So it looks like it collides with that one and then springs out. And then you can hold it right there and just let the wire come off the side. So you got that kind of little swoosh right there. And you can do the same with the top one, or you can flip it around and, you know, bring it along the other side again if you want to, right? Let me see, for me, I think I'm going to take these wires down before I do anything more. So with these two, make sure they're laying nice and side by side, and that your lines here are real elegant. Just slope off the shoulder edge right there. Hold your elegance, and I'm going to just try to make it kind of scallop up and back. So I'm going to put my thumb right there, take a sharper upper bend, make sure I've got elegance right there, make sure I've got a little shoulder that lives on the front of the pendant. Put your finger right there and make a hard bend once you get the lines looking the way you want them to. Probably going to jiggle this inside one a little bit. Didn't go down as elegant as I wanted it to. So just side by side like that, make some nice elegance. And then you can use your plier and refine it a little bit. Turn this one out a little bit more. Just be careful for plier marks. Put a little more curve on that. Make it a little sexier. Just like that, off the side of the pendant. And then once your lines are looking the way they want, come to the side, get to the back and the front of the wire with your plier and give a little squeeze. Same for the second one. Little squeeze down to lay those wires down nicely along the front there. And then we've just got, you know, a nice turn to the back. Just like that. And I might actually make that a little bit smaller. So I'm going to unfold these bends a little bit. Just like that. One wire at a time. Just put your, if you have to do this, hopefully you don't. And I'm just going to make these a little smaller. So I'm going to do the top one, bring it a little higher, and rework the bend so it's a little smaller right there. And then I'm going to do the same with the second one. I'm going to open it up, keeping my wire as nice and straight and clean as I can. And I'm going to look at the front this time, lift it a little bit higher, hold it where I want it, and then take it to the back. We'll just straighten out those wrinkles in a little bit. And that looks better. I want it a little higher. Okay, so same thing with this one. I'm probably going to push this back up onto the stone, or a little bit closer to the neck, and open that up a little bit more and get it off my stone a little bit. And then this second one, before I deal with it, I'm going to turn a little elegance out the top of that one. I'll just re-squeeze my wires here if I need to. If you don't, then don't. I do a little bit. So I just squoze them so that they laid back a little bit, a little nicer, a little cleaner, a little tighter. All right, so there goes that. And with these two now, right here at the center, I'm going to make 2 clean bends and bring them back down to the bottom. So the first, I'm going to hold the shoulder where I want it because I just put it there. And right here at the base of the bail, just going to make a careful turn down. Didn't move anything from my design. You're not pushing, you're not pulling. You're just turning those 2 wires straight down. Make sure they lay right against the back of your stone and that this stays settled. So you can get a nylon jaw, and carefully give a little squeeze at that bend and then at the design element in the front. Just give a little squeeze, be careful for your stone so that it just lays back a little bit. So try to show you that again. It was right here at the front. Make sure you get your design wires in the front with that plier and right there. And just give a little squeeze, lays them down, lays that down. Okay, and that's pretty good. Now you have 2 design wires that are coming down the bottom here that you can do some more work at the bottom with. And we'll fiddle with those in just a little bit. And we can actually drop this third one as well, because you can do the same thing. Leave a little shoulder up here. And wherever you like it, just hold it. And then make kind of a curving 90-degree bend to the back. So you get this little shoulder right there. When you get it bent the way you want it, take a nylon jaw and carefully, do any tightening squeeze if you need to. Okay, to help it lay down. And then right here at the back center, just going to eyeball it. And I'm going to drop it down right next to the other one. I'll make sure that they're sitting side by side. Then get the nylon jaw and repeat a little anchoring squeeze there if you need to. So let's bend it back a little ways. So it's going back a little bit so that you can go up with it. Help it lay down when you get it into place, and it can crisscross the other one too a little bit, right? It doesn't need to go exactly in there. Push it down with your finger. Get the line nice and elegant. Pull it to the back a little bit. I like the way that looks. gently and flip it to the back, just like I did my other ones. And see if I just prefer that real clean line. I might. I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to leave it real clean up here and put all my curly work down here. So I'm going to trim this wire, take that curl off of it. Hopefully you guys are watching ahead of time so you have these options to you. And I'll do just like the other side, get a plier and just bend it straight down the back, right there at the shoulder. Make sure your elegance is the way you want it, up front. Then get your nylon jaw, get to the front and the back and give a slight squeeze to help land that wire right here at the shoulder. Just like that. And since this wire is a shorty and isn't going to do anything, I'm just going to curl it right there and call it a day with that one. But we'll tie all of these together so that they stay put. I've taken 11 inches of half round wire here and just straightened it out with my fingers. I'm going to slip it underneath all 4 of these wires. I'm going to hold off a couple of inches right here so that I can hang on to it all. And then I'm going to use this long half and wrap all 4 of these together. I'm going to wrap them in such a way that they'll stay side by side and not buckle up on each other. So just nice tight wraps, but not so much that they buckle up on each other. And I'm just going to keep the flat side of the half round against these wires as I wrap them. After the first one, it'll be easier on you. So get that first one down there. Don't get it too tight, but get it tight enough, and then press it so that all 4 of these are flat and this lays flat across them, and then tighten it up for that first wrap. And then go ahead and get your second wrap. Same thing, you might have to jiggle to get underneath all 4 of them, but you can do it. Just let the plier help you pull it through and get it tight and flat. And I'm going to go through 3 times. And get them all wrapped together nice and tight. I have this leading fragment right here. I'll just take a couple of wraps around these shoulders right here. Just like that. And I can end it by cutting it and tucking this end right into that crevice. Give yourself a couple of millimeter. Turn that end down, get on top of it, and just push it underneath there. And those are wrapped nice and tight. Slant this one up and make 3 wraps around these 2 shoulders, keeping the flat side against your frame wires, and just motion it until it gets in there in a nice clean slant. And then you can go around a couple more times. Just like that. then bring that last strap up, cut it with a few millimeters to spare, turn it under and get on top of it and tuck it all the way under. Just like that. Save that bit of half round, we'll use it later. And now we can come back to the front and concentrate on the rest of our design. I'm not crazy about these two right here, so I think what I'm going to do is probably trim them a little bit back. So I think I'm just going to cut these back to just these little bits right here that flare out. And then I'll do something else to cover them. I'm going to go ahead and also pinch them all the way down so they lay a little flatter against the frame. And since these wires are tied now, I'll curl up this one shorty since it isn't much and I'm not going to be able to do much with it. So I'm just going to make a nice clean little spiral with it right there. Let it live right there like that. I'll go ahead and part this one out and I won't use this third one either, and I'll just make another spiral that matches it so I can end these wires nice in the back. Hold your design and just turn that into a little spiral that can live on the back right there. Make it nice, laying flat against your stone. And now I have these two additional design wires down here. Yeah, I like that much better, them short like that. And I have two additional design wires down here now. And I can part them a little bit so that there's kind of one to each side right there, evenly. After I part them, I'll just hold the one right there. Just do a slight upturn right there where it bends and get above that little guy. I'll hold that spiral right there and I'll just push this up onto the stone a little bit and turn a cute little design down. Go right over them. Slide right there just above the bottom point and just push so that it lays nicely along the side there. And we'll do the same with this one. Just kind of bend it so that you get a nice curve right there, right about where it bends. Hold on to that. Bring it forward against the frame. And then up onto your pendant just above your cut design there. And then right there, just hold it with your thumb and give a nice curve down and just past the tip there. So you're going to just roll right over it and off of the pendant, then push so that they lay side by side right there, nice and flush on the pendant. And I'm just going to leave that little squirrel there. I don't mind how that looks at all, so I like it. And I like that a lot better. It gives a little coverage to that bottom, a little slim design that kind of matches the top a little bit, so that's nice. And I have enough wired where I could probably do that again if I wanted to, you know, or you can just flip them to the back and end them. And I think in this case, I'm going to hold it right here. And I'm going to work one wire at a time, just to the outside of that tip, and bend it straight back onto the back of the stone, almost as if you're going right back up the back of the pendant. So it just makes that little hook. And then do the same with this side. Get the curve looking the way you want it. Hold it there. Make a turn to the back. Hold the top and just lay it down. And that's cute. I like that. If you feel like you need to tap it, get your nylon jaw, because this will be on top of the design. So just get your nylon jaw and work real carefully, making sure that you're on that upper curve, and little tiny pressure squeeze if it's even necessary. Okay, just like that. So it shouldn't have altered anything. It should have just helped you to lay those down. And here in the back, I'll take and pinch these two wires together. You'll feel the front shift a little bit, and that's okay. Just look back, and so long as it hasn't moved too much, put a little curve on it if necessary. You can just bring those two together right there. Okay. We don't need any more design out of this, and they're pretty short. I think I'm going to fill that space up with the bead ball. I love how the pendant's looking. It's sleek and it shows off the stone with just a little bit of accents. And so I'll just end, these two wires back here. I don't want the ends of them coming back through and looking at me in the front. So what I think I'm going to do, push that back down a little bit. If those raise too much, just push them down. I think what I'm going to do is tie them together and then just try to end them in cute little curls back here so that they're clean. The other thing you could do is cut them real short and lay them down right there, but you got to place them in such a way that, they're literally looking at these wires and you don't see the ends. So if you feel like you can do that, then you do that. And otherwise, you can go the long route and tie them up with me. So I'm just going to use that spot a half round that we had left over. It's about 5 inches, 6 inches. And I'll slip underneath these two wires with 1 inch of it, fold it over so I can hold on to it. Make sure that these two stay up the center in the back. And I'll make a few wraps, tight enough that they stay together, but not so tight that they buckle up. I want them side by side. After about 3 wraps, you can take this front one, make sure it's nice and tight. You can get rid of it with a couple of millimeter, turn the ends all the way down, and then get on top of it and squeeze it underneath. So it's a nice clean tuck. And then looking at the front, like I said, I'm going to put a couple of bead balls there, but if you're not, you see how you can see this back wire? You want to wrap up far enough that you don't see it, the cut of it. So I'll go a few more times. We're going to put beads there anyway, but I'll just wrap up beyond the visible space anyway. And then if you're close enough and you feel like you need to get these two guys, mine are, steady Betty. They're not going anywhere. So I'm not going to do anything, and I'm going to wrap beads to the front and tie them together there. But you could you know, take a wrap around each of those if you felt like yours was a little bit loose. Mine's fine. So I'm going to go a couple more times and then end these wires. You know, and if you wanted to, you can go all the way up and then snatch, you know, all the bottom wires there too, if you want to. I'm not going to. I'm going to end it right here. Turn that underneath. Tap it nice and tight. I'm going to get my little plier in there and tap everything. Make sure that's really laying flush against the front and that nothing was disturbed in the back. One is a little shorter than the other, so I'm going to cut my long one down to meet my short length. And then I'm just going to turn these. There's a little bit of a pocket. Try to get the end turned in to face the pocket like that. It should be nice and clean and it can hook right there. Just like that. Make sure it doesn't show at the bottom of the stone, but you can just hook it like that. Make sure they're nice and flat. Don't put too much pressure against the stone. That should feel really good. And then there's the beautiful front. And again, if you need to, you can take a nylon jaw and get to the front and backs of these wires and give a little squeeze just to slim them down, or give a little pressure tension if you need to. Don't wreck your design now that it's all together, and it shouldn't move those two. Okay, so that's pretty cute. So we'll get a couple of bead balls, maybe just one, and we'll see what we can do with it there. So I've decided to add a 3mm and two tinier ones. They might be 1.5, maybe 2mm. So I've decided I'm going to use a bit of 26 gauge and tie some bead balls onto the lower part of this pendant. I really like how that looks. So I'll just tie them probably onto these. And then I'll switch to the other side. Make sure the beads are all landed in place. Make sure there's all the stretches out of the wire. One, two, three, four, five. That works for me there. I'll cut it down here and tuck it, and then check it out. That's so beautiful. It's elegant, shows off the stone. It's got a very fancy back, and it's just, I think it's just lovely. All right, you guys, there we go. I hope you enjoyed making Zoey. She's beautiful and elegant and a lot of fun, you know, and once you get the pattern once or twice, it actually doesn't take that long either. And doing this little bit of scalloping and, you know, this little bit of bottom work just makes the pendant look like, you know, she's presenting the stone to you. So I just think it's lovely. I'm going to polish this up and put my favorite chain on it. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please give me a thumbs up. And if you make one, please look me up on social media and show me your beautiful work with the tag on my Perfectly Twisted Jewelry account. And I will see you guys for the next one. Thanks again. Lots of love.